Good afternoon, everyone. We continue our study in the book of Judges. And we remember Judges is right after the book of Joshua, and they are in the land and they are supposed to take care of the land. And as generations passed, one generation will forget about God. And so we read now in chapter 5, which is the continuation of chapter 4. Now, chapter 5 is rather unique because it is about a song. The idea here is Deborah and Barak sings a song, and this, I guess, is reminiscent of Exodus chapter 15 when Moses had a song. And in so doing, you find that this is the only song in the book of Judges, which means that this is the only event with with Sisera. And what happened when uh, King Yabin and Sisera was controlling the entire land, and Deborah and Barak went to the rescue of the children of Israel. And then at the end of chapter 4, we read about Yael, who actually killed Sisera. Now, that was the entire story in chapter 5. And chapter 6 builds up a song. Now, each time we have a major event that needs to be remembered, like in Exodus chapter 15, then you find that today in Judges chapter 5, we have an equivalent event, which is the event where Deborah and Barak went against Sisera and Yael killed him. And so the song goes this way. Now, every time you see a song, it is for the children of Israel to sing it. And as they sing it, they will remember. Now, it's very common in an Eastern culture where songs are used as a mechanism, as an instrument to remember key events. Chapter 2 begins this way. It says, when leaders lead in Israel. This is not really leaders lead in Israel. Let me just change this. The actual translation should be when breaches of vengeance, right? When vengeance are inflicted in Israel, and when the people willingly offer themselves to bless the Lord. So you understand that this is actually a case where there is a, a war, a battle to rescue, and then they win, and then they bless God. This is the background of this chapter. So, not how the English has been translating. So it says, hear, O kings, give ear, O princes. This is a call to everyone who is in power. I, even I, and we're talking about Devorah. I will sing to the Lord. I will sing praise to the Lord God of Israel. And then he speaks about God when you went out from Seir. Now understand, Seir or is the land given to Esau. And the other name of Esau is Edom. This is the first piece of land that was given to Esau or Edom. And the subsequent land, if you recall, north of Edom would be Moab, and then north of Moab would be Ammon, the two sons of Lot. So we're talking about Seir. When you march from the field of Edom, the earth trembled, the heavens poured. Now, remember, this is poetry, and this is the terror of God. the fear of God that's conveyed. The earth shook, the heavens rained, the clouds also poured water. This is an imagery that is described here. The mountains gushed before the Lord, meaning that this is the trail of water from the rain. This Sinai before the Lord God of Israel. Now, this idea, the word gush, in the English, uh, we say that it uh, is about water. The the idea here, how should we say? Um, the idea here about gush should better be translated as melted. I think that would be a good way of expressing uh, the presence of God. So dash is not such a great word. So this is about Esau. This is about Israel. And this is at Mount Sinai. Then it speaks of verse 6. Now, after Sinai, we had Moses, then Joshua, and then we went into the period of the kings. And the song reminds them of Shamgar. Shamgar was the one in chapter 3 at the end. And then he speaks of Yael. And by speaking of Yael, it appears that Yael was also a judge. Now, this is also the opinion of most Jewish scholars. Shamgar is a judge, Yael is a judge, Devorah is a judge. And in these days, before this particular war against Sisera, since the highways were deserted, uh, and this is a good word, people are not going back and forth. The travelers, they walk along the byways. Now, what does that mean? See, you have the highway, and one of the most famous highway there would be the King's Highway. Now, when we talk about the byways or the crooked ways, it would be the roads that is beside, which is difficult to terrain, difficult to traverse, but it is a parallel, right? A parallel path, but it is difficult to walk. Village life ceased. Now, village life would mean the unwalled, the open, unwalled cities. It ceased in Israel until I, Devorah, arose like a mother in Israel. She sees herself, well, instead of a father, right, is a mother who cares, a mother who provides a reborn of Israel in some ways to bring Israel back into a peaceful environment. It says here they chose new gods. Then there was war at the gates. Not a shield or spear was seen among 40,000 in Israel. My heart is with the rulers of Israel who offered themselves willingly with the people. Bless the Lord. And so the I guess you can say that when we talk about verse 8, this is the bad times. And then here it talks about how Deborah feels. Because when times are bad, when they went after other gods, when they didn't listen to God, the leaders would have a hard time. Verse 10 says, speak up, you who ride on white donkeys. Now, this would be the nobles, right? The rich. So those of you who are rich, and then you are sitting in judgment, clothed like judges who walk along the road. And I guess you can say that um, this is the daily affair, the how life is conducted in those days. There are the rich, the nobles, those who became judges. He says, they are far from the noise of the archers among the watering places. They shall recount the righteous acts of the Lord, the righteous acts for his villages in Israel. Now, villages means unwalled. Then the people of the Lord shall go down to the gates. This is to say that when we are back in the good times, testify of what God has done. And God has given them peace again. And his villagers are having peace. And they are no longer worried about people trying to kill them when they are fetching water. Verse 12. It says, awake, awake, Devorah. And this word awake, I guess you could say it's more of the idea of rouse up and say something. So it's not just wake up, right? This is I think we could say give praise. Give praise. Not It's not about waking up from sleep. Give praise in a song. Sing a song. Arise, Barak. And this one, arise, is also telling Barak to lead your captives away, O son of Avinoam. Then the survivors came down, the people against the nobles. The Lord came down for me against the mighty. And she is recalling chapter 4. From Ephraim were those roots in Amalek. After you, Benjamin with your peoples. From Machir, rulers came down, and this would be the east of Jordan. This is against the armies of Sisera, and this is identifying who came for the fight. We need to know that not all 12 tribes came out. Ephraim, Benjamin, half tribe of Manasseh, Zebulun, right? Zebulun, Issachar, and then what you find is the rest didn't come. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, primarily Zebulun and Issachar, right, came. Now, among the divisions of Reuben, great resolves of the heart. Now, what does that mean? It means that they were very indecisive, undecided, to go or not to go. So why did you sit among the sheep folds to hear the piping for the flocks? The divisions of Reuben have great searchings of the heart, really undecided. So they didn't come. Gilad stayed beyond the Jordan, didn't come. Now, why did Dan remain on ships? Now, what does that mean? Dan, uh, Dan is located way up north. So we can see Dan. This idea remain on ships doesn't quite cut it. He says, why did Dan gather on ships? And he's gathering their valuables, getting ready to run away because they didn't join the fight and they were not about to lose whatever they have. Then we say Asher continued at the seashore. Now, this idea of the seashore is at the north part. Asher is at the north. And they are at the north border. and they need to stay there, right, to protect his borders. I think this is what we want to say. He stayed by his, should we say, uh, to keep his borders open, right? To keep borders. So Asher had a reason, Dan didn't, Gilead didn't, Reuben didn't. And so now we also are told in the song, which we saw in chapter 4, Zebulun put their lives to the point of death. They went into the front of the fight. So did Naphtali. They fought as well. Verse 19, the kings came and fought. This would be Sisera and the army. The kings of Canaan fought. In Taanach, by the waters of Megiddo, they took no spoils of silver. Now, in the waters of Megiddo, we're talking about the plains of Megiddo or the Jezreel Valley. That was where the most of the battles were done. And then it says they fought from the heavens, the stars from their courses fought against Sisera. These are all very poetic language, right? Poetic language that Sisera is faced with God in the natural and supernatural realm. And it says the torrent of Kishon swept them away. Now, this idea here is we are in the valley and the Kishon River flows all the way through, right? This is the Kishon. And this is Jezreel. The ancient torrent, the torrent of Kishon. And so when it rained, you find that the chariots that they had got stuck in the mud. Oh, my soul, march on in its strength. And this is Deborah singing about the victory. Then the horses' hooves pounded, the galloping of his steeds. There's so many horses, and it says, curse, Meroz. Now, this is a kind of difficult idea to gain. Was it a people there? Was it a general there? Perhaps it's a general that we don't recognize today, or a city that is nearby. He says, curse Meroz in verse 22. Curse you bitterly, because they did not come to the help of the Lord, against the mighty. So this is a recount on who fought. So the song reminded that Gilead didn't, Reuben didn't, Dan didn't, and Meroz didn't. So this is to remind the people when it mattered most, a number of the tribes were very hesitant, and yet God continued this battle, and through the song of Devorah, they are duly reminded not to stay away the next time. In verse 24, it says, most blessed among women is Yael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. Now, this is quite interesting. It says, you are the most blessed of God among women, and her name is Yael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. Blessed is she among women in tents. Now, women are always in tents, as in the portrayal. He is Sisera, asked for water, she gave milk. She brought out cream in a lordly bowl. So Sisera asked for common. Yael gave noble. And in so doing, we find that the consequence of what Yael did allowed Sisera to fall asleep. So we read that in chapter 4. She then stretched out her hand to the tent peg. She picked up the tent peg, her right hand to the workman's hammer, and she pounded Sisera and pierced his head, split and struck through his temple. So it broke the skull, and the entire tent peg went into his temple. At her feet, he sank, he fell, he lay still. All of these are very graphic words of how Sisera died. At her feet, he sank, he fell. Where he sank, he fell dead. This is very, very imagery, very picturesque idea. Uh, she fell. No, the idea here is he fell to his ruin, would be a better word. He fell down dead. Now, verse 28 is another part of the song that now brings us to the mother of Sisera. Now, understand this, that Sisera is a major general in the battle machine of Yabin. And every time Sisera went out to fight, Sisera always came home. But in verse 28, in a very poetic way, then we find Deborah singing this song that the mother of Sisera was anxiously waiting for Sisera to come home. She looked through the window. She cried out through the lattice, "Why is his chariot taking so long to come back? Why is the clatter of his chariots so delayed?" Her wisest ladies answered her. The wisest princess, right, answered her. She too answered herself, "Are they not finding and dividing the spoil?" And so this is the song of Sisera's mother. From her perspective, they would be counting or dividing the spoils, because that would be what Sisera has always done. To every man, a girl or two. For Sisera, plunder of dyed garments, these are the spoils, where it is women, dyed garments, the plunder of garments embroidered and dyed, 2 pieces of dyed embroidery for the neck of the looter. So it is singing as if the mother was saying, "Oh, he is late mainly because he is dividing the spoils. There's a lot to divide." We come to the end of chapter 5, and we know that Sisera's mother is waiting forever, because Sisera is not going back. So the song ends very suddenly that Sisera isn't going back, nothing more to say about Sisera, and the mother is still waiting, thinking that the son is still alive. So thus, let all your enemies perish, O Lord. Let all your enemies be destroyed. But let those who love him be like the sun when it comes out in full strength. And this is a picture. When you have the sun coming out in full strength, that would mean that the picture of the 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 ones who love God is bold and strong. That's the picture. And at the end of the day, the conclusion here is the battle is one. It says here, Sisera is not going home. Yabin, on the other hand, is no longer powerful. And we are now told at the end as a comment. And now the land rests for 40 years. Now, all these 40 years, it seems like a very round number. Think of 40, the number 40, as a number where it is another test. That 40 is peaceful. They had rest, and in this case, rest means undisturbed. This is not shalom. This is undisturbed. Nobody dares come to fight Israel. For 40 years, that's a long time. And they have rest and, well, we can call it peace and quiet for 40 years. Now, of course, we find that in every other chapter, when the peace time comes, then they slowly forget God. Another generation comes. So always remember 40 years is a long time, and you find a new generation rises up. The old generation dies off. And then next week, when we come to chapter 6, it is at the end of the 40 years, things happen again. And with this, we come to the end of our session today. Một